OJ in Atlanta, Ernie Johnson, Shaquille O'Neal, Kenny the Jet Smith, and Charles Barkley. This will not be your traditional pregame show. For the next 10 minutes, we're talking Ferguson. Charles has had much to say on various media outlets, agreeing with the decision not to indict Officer Darren Wilson in the death of Michael Brown and referring to the looters and those who set fires in Ferguson as you put it, scumbags. Kenny's written an open letter to Charles, which appeared in USA Today. I'll start with you, too. Now that you're face-to-face on our air.
Yeah, we were face-to-face last night. Well, we were together, actually, last night.
Let me say this. Maybe I shouldn't have used the term scumbags, but it's irrelevant. Still, there's no justification for what they did. If I'd have said crooks, thugs, or whatever, still, what they did was 100% wrong. The only problem, me and Kenny, it's all right to disagree. I respect him. He knows I love him like a brother. We've had this conversation. You know, the decision in Ferguson, I just went by the evidence. I didn't say anything. I didn't go by the initial media reports. When I looked at the grand jury testimony, I know something bad happened. And I said, I understand, whether you agree or disagree, I understand why they not indict the officer. But there's no excuse for those people burning down their houses and cars and setting the police on cars on fire. Listen, I think it does a disservice. We got a lot of race baiters out there. And my goal in life is to, being from Alabama, to always be able to have an open and fair dialogue on race. My grandmother, the greatest person ever, always told me, you judge every person on their own individual merits. All black people ain't great. All white people ain't evil. The only problem I had with Kenny's open letter was, I don't think anytime something black happens in the black community, we got to talk about slavery. Listen, slavery is, well, I shouldn't say one of the worst things ever, because I don't know anything about it other than what I read or what my grandmother told me. And we, as black people, we need the cops in our community. They're not there just to, quote unquote, kill black men, or they're there to protect us. And we, as black people, we've got to develop a relationship with them. And that was my point throughout the entire thing. You know, and I actually touched on the Eric Garner thing, because I think what happened to that man was awful. But I understand, they shouldn't have went for murder, is what I have said. It should have been manslaughter or aggravated assault. But I never thought they were going to indict that cop on murder. And that's the only thing I had to say about it. So, Kenny, go ahead.
Why did you feel compelled, Kenny, to write the open letter to Chuck?
Well, I thought, firstly, you know, when I contacted Chuck, I said, you know what, I get so many calls when you say something or I say something that I have to respond or think, what do you say, what do you think about it? I said, we always feel like we're married to the hip. But I thought in this instance, it was so big and so socially, economically important that I separated myself in certain instances of what I felt and not always joined at the hip. So, and Charles and I talked about it. He knew I was going to write it. And the biggest thing that I felt was that a lot of times Charles's insight, a lot of times get misconstrued with other people's insight in the same way. Just in terms of his acknowledgement of knowing what it is about the subject as an expert, so to speak. And that's not his fault. And that's why, and when you read the letter, that's what I said. And Chuck, just to kind of reiterate, I also don't agree that slavery, anything should be brought in this issue. And that's what I said in the letter as well. I think the biggest aspect is it's a lack of trust in the African-American community, which is actually caused by poor economic situations, poor recreational situations, and poor education. So when you reap that type of environment, you sow flowers that can bloom, but you're also gonna sow weeds. So we have to acknowledge first that there is a disparagement between poor people and African-American people in the law. There is a disparity, at first it was on purpose, and then the civil rights has come, which is only 50 years or so behind. It's not like my parents were part of that. So you have to understand that it's still fresh in the African-American household. It's not something that's far away. So it's something that always feels a distrust that things are still not equal in the judicial system and in the police system.
Did you feel that the lack of an indictment there was wrong?
I felt that.
Because Charles said he read the evidence, heard what everybody in the grand jury had to say, and said they made the right call.
Right.
Did they make the right call?
I don't know. That wasn't the point of my letter. That wasn't the point I even made at all. My point was to not acknowledge that you also have a hand in creating an environment. And I use the analogy of being on an island, and you have 100 people on an island that are stranded, and you have no hope, no food, no water, and no ship to come. Some people are going to act resourceful and great. Some people are going to act out of character. Some people are going to live in it, and some people are going to panic. But to not acknowledge that you put them on this island and that's not possible is ignorant to me. So the solution for me is, how do you help the island? How do you make people feel that they can be heard? Because really it's more about anger management than it is about things. We've all been angry or upset in emotional environments that may have done things out of character. And that, when you don't have a voice, sometimes this leads to that. So figure out a way, a solution to give people a voice so they feel they can be heard, other than burning down things and looting things.
You've been very patient, waiting, listening. Weigh in.
Well, you know, I'm big into law enforcement, and you know, we watch a lot of training videos on you know, certain subject matter, and you know, one thing they teach us is to never judge another officers. Me personally, I don't think all the evidence is out there, and you know, I think a lot of time, you know, when people see things from the media outlet, it triggers certain things. I thought Chuck used some harsh words, and you know, he just apologized for those words, and you know, but we as African American people, we've been dealing with this for a long time, decades, centuries, and you know, but a lot of times when a black guy stops a white guy, you know, it's not about racism. When a white guy stops a black guy, it's not about racism. I do agree with Chuck when he said, you know, the police are there to protect us, and we do need to develop a better relationship. But every time something like this happens, you know, this is very tragic in Ferguson, you know, tragic in New York. It's not about race all the time.
And let me make this
because you have to say to yourself.
I want to say this. First of all, Kenny got some valid points. I'm very black. Kenny's very black. No matter how much money you got, you are black no matter what. Shaq also, excuse me. And there is an economic disparagement, but white, poor people, Hispanics, they're in the same boat because our economic system is flawed. But as a black man, you have to know you don't have the same luxuries as a guy who lives in a great neighborhood, who goes to a great school. So you can't put yourself, we all know the system, but you can't compound the situation by getting involved with law enforcement or committing crimes, because then you're part of the judicial system.
Ben Watson, who used to play in the NFL, and a lot of you have seen it, wrote this piece about the whole thing. And part of it, while he says, I'm sympathetic, I'm offended, I'm sad, I'm embarrassed, he said, I'm confused because I don't know why it's so hard to obey a policeman. You will not win. And I don't know why some policemen abuse their power. Power is a responsibility, not a weapon to brandish and lord over the populace.
He was amazing. But Ernie, because I feel sad for Michael Brown's family. I feel empathy for Eric Garner's family. It's an awful subject to talk about. 2 people died. But I try to be honest and fair. And sometimes, you know, it's funny. I hear all these guys talking about my opinion. First of all, people want to hear your opinion unless you disagree with them. That's the only thing that bothers me. Like if I would have came out and said, as a black man, if I would have came out and said all the cops suck, all the black people saying, I love that damn Charles Barkley. So you're always in an awful, awkward situation. But listen, as my grandmother said, I'm going to judge everybody by their own merits, black or white, and I'm going to be fair. And some people are going to agree with me, and some people are going to kiss my ass.
Well, well, some people will, and I don't think that, and lastly,
and I don't mean you.
Real quick, because we got to get to the.
I will. I will get to.
You know, I don't mean you, right?
No question.
Okay.
And I would say that he has his opinion. We all have our opinion, but I also think that collectively we have to think about the ramifications of why people are in those positions. And I thought that's what was missed. But having his opinion, that's what we're here for.
For the rest of the night, you're going to watch basketball. We're going to talk basketball. Cavs and Knicks, New Orleans and Golden State, next.